What's up, everybody? So this is going to be a potentially long-winded what if for a little bit. And before that, I just want to say I know about the audio comments people have been leaving about some videos seem low or whatever. I check the rambles that I do when I record them. When I turn into a video, I double check it to make sure everything's okay. And then when I upload it, I check them here and there. And I've only really encountered one or two where the audio was a little low, but nothing that raising your volume couldn't fix. I'm not pawning it off, but I'm just saying I don't know how to fix it because I'm doing nothing different from video to video, so I just have to figure it out. Just wanted to point that out and call it out. But anyways, with that said, this is a what if around the Emperor. What if the Emperor accepted divinity? And it seems like such a simple concept, but when you really break it down, it changes a lot of the structure of what we would know in 40K fluff, for sure, right? So you can't really just take how the 40K fluff is and just sprinkle in, the Emperor accepted divinity. You have to change basically everything that the Emperor did to a degree in terms of his philosophy and everything, because the Imperial truth could still exist and still be mostly what it is, with just changes to the fact that he is, accepting of being humanity's god, basically, and still have it denouncing warp and those chaos god things and things like of that nature. But the Emperor, being the Emperor, would do it in a savvy manner, right? He wouldn't just come forth as humanity's god. He would pretty much, I think, allow how it comes to be for him anyway, how basically humanity gifts him, bequeaths him, if you will, the title of God of humanity, and kind of begrudgingly accept it and never directly call himself it, and still hunt down zealots, religious zealots out there that maybe don't conform with how he would put it forth, right? So he would have his stamping out of religious cult-like zealotry, because I feel it's not so much that worship me on the Emperor. I think it's more so to worship me, you must follow the Imperial truth is how we would see it done. But this still has to go back prior to the Great Crusade, prior to humanity kind of lifting up from that pedestal, all the way to his unification and his whole grand plan for the Great Crusade and the Primarch Project and everything. I think him rooting out things that are not him and everything like that, you could say unifying terror would still be happening. Perhaps humanity viewing him as a god and ascending him to that title might happen a bit sooner in this scenario. But it would basically permeate, I think, everything he does that we know in terms of big things. Because firstly, we have to understand in 40K, belief is a powerful weapon in 40K. The orcs have it in kind of a silly manner, right? Gork and Mork, they believe in that, and that kind of fuels some of their strength. And the red ones go faster. An orc paints their vehicle red, it's going to naturally go faster. Because the orcs have this sort of unconscious, unknowing, to them. It's just an unconscious power belief, you could say. It's kind of a weird thing. And because the orcs as a society, view red vehicles as going faster, they kind of do. Also, some technology has been written in fluff to not work outside of orc hands. Some of the more out there weaponry, for example, just won't function unless an orc is using it because they believe in it, you could say. Chaos gods being worshipped and everything fuels their beliefs fuels them, their belief in them, as the souls. But my point is, belief has power in 40K and pretty potent power. That's why if the Emperor embraced divinity, it's an interesting what if. And people have talked about this for a while. So with that said, I still don't think the Emperor would be like, worship me, as God of humanity. I still think he would kind of never really address himself as such. kind of playing the whole card of the truly divine don't call themselves God, and those who are godly wouldn't demand recognition as such kind of card as he played unwillingly in standard fluff. But I think, like I said, the Imperial Truth with some modifications, obviously, because he would be embracing divinity and expecting kind of divine lordship of the race. He would kind of perceive that as most likely happening because of just how powerful he is and how capable he is of leading humanity out of the dark and into the light. So the Imperial Truth would be structured in a way that would allow for that and be kind of the religion, if you will. I've kind of talked about that concept in Paramount Purpose, how the Imperial Truth would be the law of the land and kind of be the religion of humanity, if you want to look at it that way. And in this case, it would quite literally be thus. If you worship the Emperor, if you believe in the Emperor and are loyal to the Emperor and will worship your God Emperor, you will do so by following the tenets of the Imperial Truth dictated by him. It's kind of like the Bible and the commandments and all that in real religion and other similar as things in other types of religion, where it's like it came from him, the Emperor. The Emperor wrote this down. The Emperor said this is the way, right? And you follow it. And in such, you worship the Emperor. So, as a result, you still wouldn't have, I think, religious zealotry and crazy superstition the way we see in post-Heresy 40K, because the Emperor was trying to denounce that and get rid of that. But I think, in this case, we see a bit more of a pragmatic Emperor who would be like, yeah, okay, you want to make me a god, I'm a god. But if you're going to worship this god, you got to do it this way with the Imperial Truth. And it would be a modified Imperial Truth, obviously. But it would go further than that. Because I think the Emperor would be the divine, the deity to humanity as they would make him for himself. What I mean by that is he's not taking the title and saying it so. The race of humanity is basically saying so. Those who follow the Imperium follow the Emperor. As a result, the Emperor would play off this because he's savvy like that and would make humanity a holy race. This is now a great crusade in such a religious manner. I mean, the crusade is often, it has those religious overtones to it. A lot of stuff in the Great Crusade itself do. So it would be quite the crusade, literally. It would be the holy race of humans is doing its destiny, its divine right, its manifest destiny to take over the galaxy at large. This is our right as the holy race of holiness. We have our God leading us, and he is divine, he is a deity, and we are burdened with, glorious purpose, you could say. Divine purpose. Holy is the race. It doesn't make humanity divine itself necessarily. That would be reserved for the Emperor and some other things, as I'll get to in a moment. But it would mean that humanity would have a very different look, if you will, of itself in terms of viewing itself, at least openly at this point, with the Emperor as the chosen. The Imperium is the chosen humanity. They are the holy humans. Those who would not follow the Imperium, would not follow the Emperor, are heathens and heretics, right? If you do not, we come to your world, we bring the light of the God Emperor. If you do not want to follow, then you must be purged because you have no place in this holy order, you could say. So it'd be a bit more ruthless, perhaps, but still have the shining light of the Imperial Truth for bringing this kind of, trying to bring a quasi-Renaissance age in a weird kind of way, right? Because instead of denouncing all forms of religion and only having logic and science and technology leading the way, it is science, technology, and and logic. There we go. I said science twice. Science, technology, and logic, being the course, for sure, and reason through the God Emperor who set down these holy tenets. This is all spitballing. Obviously, we're never going to see this. This is just why it's called a what if, mind you. And it's just an opinion. This isn't fact. We can't have fact in a fictional setting like this when we think about it in a what if way. Remember that. Anyways, with that said, I mentioned, divinity, divine, deitious stuff would be reserved for the Emperor and some other things. Well, Malcador would be an interesting case because he would definitely be kind of viewed as perhaps a bit divine himself, or gifted divinity by the Emperor, you could say, in the eyes of humanity, because he doesn't seem anything more than human, but a chosen human, you could say. The Custodes would definitely, golden clad as they are, alongside the Emperor, be viewed, I think, with divinity as well. The Primarchs, of course. The Primarchs would be, how the Emperor calls them his sons. His Primarchs quite literally would be demigods. If the Emperor is the king god, the all-father, if you will, then you have other gods and in this pantheon, and the Primarchs would be that. They were that in all but name, basically, anyway, to humanity, called demigods of battle and everything like that. So they already kind of were fulfilling this role, if not officially, in the eyes of many. And that would be an official thing. So not only would they be viewed as divine by humanity, but they themselves, especially once reunited with the Emperor, would be more or less brought into the fold as one of the pantheon. And also, I think the Emperor would have, in the Primarch purpose concept way, during the Primarch project, would have kind of engineered the Primarchs to kind of be accepting of this and gravitate towards this idea. And as such, the worlds of the Primarchs, for the most part, we still have a couple of exceptions, would be kind of holy planets, already kind of trimmed and primed proper for the coming of the Emperor. We have a couple exceptions, like Aragorn's world still, and perhaps Mortarions and everything like that, but still, the idea of being holy like this and being a demigod like this would drive, I feel, honestly, the Emperor and his people to perhaps more seriously look at Angron's condition when he's first found with the butcher's nails, and probably do something to rectify that problem. Because you have glorious purpose, manifest destiny, divine reason, and divine right in the eyes of humanity to conquer the galaxy. Here we are being reunited with the Emperor's sons, gods of the pantheon of humanity. Why would you want one to die off slowly in that insane murderous way, like Aragorn would eventually? So I think there would definitely be some sort of rectification there in this particular concept. On top of that, the Emperor, I feel, will be way more forthcoming to his sons, to his fellow pantheon, if you will, those beneath him, as basically describing the warp, the Chaos Gods, what to look for, how to protect against it, the dangers of it, kind of like the light and the dark side of the Force with Jedi. I think he would definitely be preaching, if you will, to his sons the way of navigating the warp if necessary, and the way of combating it, and what to look for in signs of corruption and everything like that. And certain legions, such as the Word-Bearers and the Thousand Sons, and perhaps some others, would be particularly adept at dealing with the warp and understanding its ways. Lorgar, being the scholar that he is, would be pretty well with it, and I think the Thousand Sons would definitely fulfill a Grey Knight-like role, being so psycho-heavy as a legion and everything. I don't think the Council of Nicaea would necessarily happen in the same manner. I think Psychers would definitely be something the Emperor would be concerned about, because they are a gateway for those false gods, those false deities of chaos to manifest. But I think, given the rigid structure and training he would have, and understanding and knowledge and tutelage to Magnus and the other Primarchs, and therefore their legions for Psychers and chaos, corruption, and all that, I think certain legions, such as the Thousand Sons, would be granted a pass and be allowed. And perhaps there might be a couple of legions that would really maybe just decide to not have Psychers anyway, and maybe therefore be reinforced that they cannot have Psychers, perhaps just out of safety. Maybe the World Eaters, for example. Just throwing it out there. Or it could just be a case where the legions are given a pass, because if the Primarchs are gods of the Pantheon, sons of the God King, Super God Emperor guy, right? And if the Custodes are kind of his chosen seraph bodyguard-like divine almost Valkyrie-esque entities, and if the Sisters of Silence are lesser divine, but still kind of this eerie divine kind of defenders of the Emperor as well, well then, the legions of Astartes are the offspring, you could say, of the demigods, of the Primarchs, of the Pantheon, and already are called the Emperor's Angels of Death. We have a lot of angelic imagery associated with the Astartes. Sanguinus, the Archangel, his legion very much set up in choir-like, angel-like setups, in standard fluff. So we, or the hosts, I should say, not choirs, although you could use either. So if they're already referred to as the Emperor's Chosen, his Angels of Death, as a military might force for his vengeance and his wrath, well, they're divine too, and therefore Astartes would be kind of like the angels of the religion of humanity, if you will. If the Imperial Truth is worshipping the Emperor is the God Emperor, the God King, the All Father, if you will, in that way, the Amun Ra or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But my point is, if he is the ultimate God Emperor, and then in the pantheon below him of standard gods, you would have the Primarchs. And the Primarchs, their actual essence, derived from the Emperor, is in the Astartes. Since the Astartes essence is derived from the Primarchs, which is derived from the Emperor, they would be touched with divinity. And since they are created from the masses of humanity, the chosen humans are chosen to transform into these divine angels of death for the Emperor. You would definitely have, I think, a lot of fanaticism and loyalty and worship going on around the Legion homeworlds, and you would definitely have, I think, humanity kind of cutting itself from a different cloth here, right? Because, did you hear? You could be chosen to be part of the Emperor's divine plan if you become an Astartes, or your children can be, stuff like that. And I think that would help kind of push forth the zealotry, religious fervor cause of the Imperial Truth, right? If you were truly faithful and loyal, your loyalty can be rewarded. You can have, your offspring chosen, to become divine. All of this together, I think, will lead to a bit more of a convicted humanity, because Lorgar wouldn't have to go skulking off like a scolded child to find something else to worship. You don't have the first heretic scenario in that regard, and you don't therefore have the fall to chaos and the Horus Heresy happening. It doesn't mean there couldn't be some great conflict, right? Again, in this case, you are a heretic if you do not follow the Imperium and worship the God Emperor as he goes forth. And his chosen sons, the demigods they are, the Primarchs, will bring forth the chosen humans, turned divine angels, the Astartes, to rain justice down upon you. How dare you even try to resist such divine wrath? The Emperor and his seraph bodyguards in the form of custodes, and to an extent the his agents, his Valkyrie-esque agents in the Sisters of Silence, you could say, will tear you apart. There is nothing you can do to stop our manifest destiny to control the galaxy. These are the mindsets I feel the Emperor would instill via the Imperial Truth, and that humanity would kind of cultivate through their worship, and be their worship being guided, right? Any other type of offshoot of Emperor worship, he would crush utterly. Anything that would bring superstition, would bring stagnation, would bring the religious problems he sought to avoid by crushing all other resistance like that, right? So I think in this what-if scenario, the Emperor would have a much more convicted human front of the Imperium. He would be able to cultivate and actually kind of control the way the worship is done through the Imperial Truth, and therefore in that grand worship of the Imperial Truth, you're worshiping the Emperor and kind of bolstering his power in a way, especially on the warp front, if you will, against the Chaos Gods, making him truly the anathema, or I always pronounce that wrong, of the Chaos Gods, their great enemy. as far as a massive grand conflict, in this case, you could have one of the Lost Legions be a cause of that, right? Maybe one of the Lost Legions was martyred off in a great battle, such as in the Rangdan genocides, and therefore that legion might not be lost in a sense of all things expunged, or maybe it has to be a necessity, but still something, maybe the empty plinth, the unknown Primarch monument is erected in worship and remembrance of the grand sacrifice of the Second Legion, let's say, or whatever. And then maybe the 11th Legion, or vice versa, could have enacted a horrible Civil War-esque concept like the Horus Heresy because of the utter refusal to believe in divine and therefore break away. Who knows, right? It could be a united human front of those who just are too afraid of this divine purpose that of ragtag worlds kind of band together, perhaps falling to the worship of chaos to battle against what they view as a oppressive imperium from the outside. Who knows? There's still cause for the potential to have a galaxy burning level event. It just probably wouldn't happen the way we understand it, with Lorgar getting corrupted and therefore then corrupting Horus, and Horus therefore leading the heresy and corrupting those underneath him. It's entirely plausible. It's just in the setup and the build-up for the Emperor embracing divinity, and if that was his plan all along and the way he would shape his Primarchs with it, I think there would be a much harder case for the Chaos Gods to try and get their hands on a Primarch to corrupt them and lead to something as large as the Horus Heresy. So that's just some food for thought on what if the Emperor embraced divinity. I still think he would do it in his typical Emperor savviness ways. It doesn't lead to just steamrolling of the galaxy and being a perfect galaxy of humanity, but I definitely think it would lead to quite a different station for humanity, quite a different viewpoint, and in that way, I think it leads to a strengthened humanity insofar as it can, right? This is, of course, one way you can look at it. I've seen stuff online of people talking about this very same topic in which it takes a much darker turn. But in keeping with the idea the Emperor is this kind of beacon of order and the great enemy to chaos and stands against everything chaos stands for, I tend to view it like this. And it doesn't mean that you can't have something that fractures the galaxy at large. It doesn't mean that the Chaos Gods wouldn't put all of their eggs in one basket to try and topple the holy seat on Terra or whatever. It just means it would be done in a very different manner, more than likely. Maybe some Xenos faction or something, along those lines. Maybe Chaos could corrupt the great beast that is the Orc race in some way, using guile and trickery to manifest stuff in the way of Gork and Mork and really kind of drive them and have chaos corrupted orcs to be a very interesting concept, and army to face and whatever. Who knows? Anyways, just some food for thought, some random food for thought that I've been thinking about for a little bit. Of course, share your thoughts on how silly and stupid this is. I'm sure people will say because it's the internet. Also, share your thoughts in a constructive way too. Do you agree or disagree, or what are your thoughts with the Emperor? Should the Emperor embrace divinity? Now, this is different, I will say, before signing off, being long enough as it is. This is a different concept than the idea of the Golden Throne, the Emperor interred on it, and the idea of a Lichstrom that he has. I have an actual ramble plan for that as well. My thoughts on the Lich of 40k, which is the Emperor, but it's a different concept because here we have a living, breathing, walking God Emperor, right? Not interred on a golden throne. So, little different. Anyways, thanks very much for tuning in. It's just a random ramble. I decided why not throw something random that really has no purpose out here. It's what I do. If you enjoyed, feel free to stick around and hit the subscribe button. And thanks so much for listening and tuning in. And until next time, take it easy.